What's up guys, and welcome back to another round of the 2019 F1 modded career mode, back today for round number 15, the Singapore Grand Prix. We're getting into the final part of the season now, the last set of flyaways, and if you guys are still enjoying this series, do make sure to leave a like down below. So we get into this Singapore Grand Prix then, with one upgrade on the car, and one failed one, unfortunately. So the brake calipers, which I believe failed last time out, we've got them on the car. But the downforce upgrade, which would have been useful around here, has failed. So that'll be on the car next time in Russia, as will another chassis upgrade, which should hopefully help us with the tyre wear. And in terms of the performance chart, that upgrade has kept us very, very close to Red Bull, Mercedes and Ferrari, but we still are the fourth quickest team. But just look at that gap back to Haas, so yeah, pretty happy with our progress. Now, of course, in the real-life F1 season, we are now in pre-season testing, and that means that all the teams have released their new cars and liveries for the new season, and I've added quite a number of them for this race. So you'll be able to see in the background exactly the cars which I've added new liveries for. We're still waiting on a few to be uploaded to Race Department, so Ferrari, Red Bull, Racing Point, and the actual Alfa Romeo livery haven't been uploaded yet. But we are sporting the testing Alfa Romeo livery that they had last week for Valentine's Day. So hopefully you guys like the new liveries. Let me know what you think down below. And what do you guys think is the best looking livery of this season? That would be really good to know down in the comments. Now we've got an action-packed Singapore Grand Prix ahead, so getting straight into the grid, we can see that it is Max Verstappen who put it on pole in a wet qualifying ahead of his teammate Pierre Gasly. So they're looking strong on a circuit which is very reliant on good aerodynamics, ahead of the two Ferraris of Vettel and Leclerc. Then in 5th, we've got Lewis Hamilton ahead of our teammate Daniel Ricciardo, with Valtteri Bottas in 7th, and a very good performance from Lando Norris in 8th. And the top 10 is rounded out by Magnussen and Grosjean. We are sat all the way down in P11 in what was a pretty poor qualifying. We went out at the wrong time, and yeah, just didn't really pay off for us. Carlos Sainz also qualified ahead of us, but he has taken a penalty, meaning he'll start in 18th. And then we have got George Russell and Antonio Giovinazzi rounding out the grid for what will be a grueling and long Singapore Grand Prix. So as we had a wet qualifying, the drivers can start on whatever tyres they want, which means that we might see a variety of strategies in play in this Grand Prix. Ourselves, we're going to go conservative. We're going to go for that two-stopper because the tyre temperatures around here at Singapore can get very, very high. And for that reason, I just don't think we're able to sort of do very well on tyre conservation. So we're going to start on a set of Hypersoft tyres and then go for 2 sets of the Ultrasoft and hopefully remain quick for the entire Grand Prix. So onto the formation lap we go then, and in the background you'll be able to take a little bit of a closer look at the brand new liveries on show for this Grand Prix. But in terms of the drivers' standings, we'll take a quick look at that as well in the bottom right corner. You can see that we're currently ahead of both of the Red Bulls, Max Verstappen and Pierre Gasly. Hopefully we can remain ahead of them and maybe even jump them in the constructors' standings before the end of the season. But of course it is a Red Bull 1-2 up at the front, so it's going to be very difficult to close that gap today, especially as we're starting outside the top 10. But we now go to 5 red lights here in Singapore and away we go. The lights weren't on for very long whatsoever. There's a lot of wheel spin up and down the grid as we're looking for a good start to try and get ahead of Romain Grosjean, who's starting on the soft tyres. It looks as if we've dispatched of him in turn 1. Now we're going to try and go all the way around the outside at turn 3 on Lando Norris, and we have managed to do so, and we're now sat behind Kevin Magnussen, who is on the Ultrasoft tyres. So again, it doesn't look as if many drivers have opted for the Hypersofts at the start of this Grand Prix. You can see the race leader Max Verstappen is, I believe, the only other driver that's opted for the Hypersofts. So we're going to try and make up as many positions as possible in the opening stages of this race. We're currently behind Kevin Magnussen, but taking a look down the inside, we're going very, very aggressive. We're already, of course, into the top 10, so we've made a couple of positions off the start, but we really could do with making up more whilst these Hypersoft tyres are at their best. So we've got Magnussen and then Valtteri Bottas next up. So it's not been a good qualifying or start for the Mercedes driver. We're now going to go down the inside of Kevin Magnussen. A very clean move there as we went over the Anderson Bridge and into turn 13, which means we are now up into P8 after just 2 sectors in this Grand Prix and closing up to that Mercedes of Valtteri Bottas, he is also, like some of the cars that we passed at the start, on the soft tyres. So hopefully we can close in on him, but we're now going to take a look at a replay of what happened at the start up at the front of the pack. So Verstappen got a clean getaway, but his teammate Gasly, by the looks of it, tagged the man in P3, Sebastian Vettel. So a clean getaway for the race leader, but not for the man in P2 or P3. But all of the top 3, though, did hold position. And then behind them, we have got, it looks as if we've got Lewis Hamilton, who has actually jumped Charles Leclerc. So yes, it is Lewis Hamilton that is sat in P4. So not a great start for Leclerc, who is on the harder compound of tyre than Lewis Hamilton. So yeah, it's going to be very, very difficult for Leclerc to hold position there as well, because he has got our teammate Daniel Ricciardo prowling, and we are prowling behind Valtteri Bottas, who's very, very slow out of the final corner of lap 1. And now we start the second lap of the Grand Prix and just can't get close enough to him into turn 1, and we run very, very wide there, still trying to sort of pick our braking points at this stage of the Grand Prix. It's the first time I've done any sort of heavy fuel running around this Singapore circuit for a very, very long time. And we're closing up, though, to Valtteri Bottas, despite not being completely in the groove as of yet. We bump it up to overtake mode on the ERS deployment. We're in rich mix on fuel, and we're going to go down the inside of the fin into turn 7 at the Memorial Corner, and we are up into P7 in this Grand Prix at turn 7. We've got Leclerc and Daniel Ricciardo going at it up ahead. It looks as if our teammate has just wiggled his way up into P5. So Ricciardo on the ultra soft tyres at this stage of the Grand Prix. So yeah, very much needed to get that move done if he didn't want to be held up. And we are going to have to do exactly the same if we want to get ahead of Charles Leclerc at the end of this Grand Prix. We're probably going to have to dispatch of him now, because you'd imagine if he's on those soft tyres, he'll be doing a 1-stopper compared to our 2-stop. But we're going to try and sweep round the outside of turn 1, and we managed to do so, get that move done. And it has been an all-action 2 and a bit laps of this Singapore Grand Prix so far. We've barely missed any action. You know, we've been pretty much on board for the entirety of the race so far, but now we skip a little bit further ahead onto lap 5, and this is what I was talking about earlier on with regards to the race strategy. Just look at that front right tyre, 107 degrees, and the front left isn't doing too well when we go through the left-handers either. Sorry, through the right-handers. So because this is an anti-clockwise circuit, that right front tyre is the one that takes a lot of punishment. You can see it's gone red through the final couple of corners. So as we go into lap 6 of this Grand Prix, we're really starting to lose pace and lose sight of our teammate Daniel Ricciardo. But meanwhile, up at the front, it looks as if Verstappen is suffering the same fate on these hyper-soft tyres. So he'll be looking forward to getting those off pretty soon by the looks of it, or at least you'd imagine, because he has got his teammate Pierre Gasly right behind, and it looks as if Sebastian Vettel has closed up now. So there was a bit of a gap to the German in P3 as Verstappen now comes into the pit lane, and it is very much going to be a 3-way battle for the race victory throughout the course of this Singapore Grand Prix. And there you can see in the background Lewis Hamilton struggling a little bit in comparison to the Red Bulls and the lead Ferrari. But now as we come to the end of lap 6, we are going to follow exactly what the race leader Max Verstappen did and come in for our first of 2 pit stops this afternoon in what is a very, very tricky pit lane to negotiate here in Singapore. But we managed to do it just about okay, and there you can see nearly 50% wear, which around a circuit like this really, really does punish you, because you've got a lot of sort of high traction corners, a lot of high speed left-handers as well. So yeah, we've got a set of the Ultra Softs on now, which should mean we are a lot quicker than the last couple of laps. But we emerge from the pit lane in what looks like P19. So we've just got Carlos Sainz behind us, who I believe has also come into the pit lane once already this afternoon. In fact, he is in the pit lane as we speak. So we're behind Antonio Giovinazzi, who is the next car ahead. I'm not quite sure exactly how far ahead he is, but as you can see, it didn't take us long to catch him. He wasn't even in sight at the start of lap 7, but by the time we come through this final sector, we are right on his gearbox. And it just shows you, around this circuit, a set of fresh tyres means a lot in terms of lap time. So we're actually going to go down the inside of Giovinazzi at the penultimate corner there, turn 22. And as we start lap 8 of this Grand Prix, we are up a position into P18. And next up, it will be George Russell in that Rocket Williams car. So let me know, guys, in the comments, what do you think of how the Williams car actually looks in game, how it looks on track at the Barcelona pre-season test? I don't think when we're looking at it from behind, it looks too bad. I think it looks a pretty attractive car, but now we're going to close up to it, and it looks like we're going to go down George Russell's inside. We go purple through the first sector, and we're not staring at that Williams car for long. Although, the next car up ahead is Robert Kubica, so both of those two, Russell and Kubica, are, you would assume, on a one-stop strategy, because they're both on the soft tyres to start this Grand Prix. And by the time we finish lap 8, we've got clear of George Russell, and we are on the tail of his teammate Robert Kubica, who of course took a podium earlier on in this series at the Belgian Grand Prix, but it doesn't look like he's going to be scoring any points today, never mind the podium, and we slip down his inside into P16 at the start of lap 9. And next up is the second Alfa Romeo car of Kimi Raikkonen. We've passed his teammate Giovinazzi, and sure enough, by the end of lap 9, we have closed up to Kimi Raikkonen. It just shows you how much progress we've made with this Renault car and how quick we're looking around this circuit. Because our pace is absolutely unreal compared to these, I guess you'd say, backmarker teams or midfield teams. Just look, we're basically pushing Kimi Raikkonen through this final sector in the interestingly liveried Alfa Romeo. Of course, the same livery which they debuted the car in back in a test on the 14th of February, which is why it has all the hearts on it. But now we are trying to battle it and get ahead of it on lap 10 of this Singapore Grand Prix, getting great traction there off turn 4. And as we now swing through turn 5 and onto the main straight on this Singapore circuit, the longest straight, with a kink in the middle of it, of course. We get past Kimi Raikkonen, but he's trying to fight back. Of course, Raikkonen does have DRS, and we're closing up to the back of Albon. We didn't want to go back into the back of Alexander Albon, so we sort of had to back off a bit there. But I think as we come through turn 8, we have got ahead of Kimi Raikkonen now. And next up, we've got our sights on Alexander Albon. Although this middle sector, of course, is very, very tricky to get a move done. I think we may try and have a go over the Anderson Bridge and into turn 13. If we can get a good enough run on Albon, we will do so. But I think we got a little bit too close there through turn 12. And yeah, sure enough, we're going to have to sit behind him. And now on the run to turn 14. If we get enough traction, we may be able to slip it up the inside. And we have committed to that inside line. We break late. And Albon is still on our outside. So fair play to him. He's still holding in there. And now into the final sector we go. But we just take as much of the road as possible. And get up ahead of Alexander Albon into P14. What a hectic first 10 laps this has been, by the way. We're only a third race distance. And we've already had this much action. So yeah, pretty crazy Grand Prix, and there is still a lot more to come. So we're going to take a look at the running order now on lap 10 of this Grand Prix. And we've got Pierre Gasly, interestingly, leading the way at the moment. I believe he's still yet to pit for the first time. And he's still ahead of Sebastian Vettel. And it looks as if he's put a little bit of a gap between the two of them. And then in third position, we've got Lewis Hamilton. P4 is our teammate, Daniel Ricciardo, still, of course, on his first set of tyres. And then behind him is Charles Leclerc on the soft tyres. So you'd imagine before too long, Leclerc will take the lead of this Grand Prix ahead of that man, Valtteri Bottas. And then quite a way down, we have got Max Verstappen, who is on a fresher set of tyres. And he has made his first pit stop of the afternoon. But it'll be interesting to see whether it's helped him, hindered him coming into the pit lane. Because, of course, he will have had to negotiate through a bit of traffic. And talking of traffic, back on board with ourselves. We're now behind Lance Stroll on lap 11 of this Grand Prix in the Racing Point car. And there you can see on screen Lewis Hamilton is out of the Singapore Grand Prix. So it's good news for us. That's a position gain, but very bad news for Lewis Hamilton's title charge. He's still very much in with a shot of winning this World Championship, but that is going to do him no favours. And now as we come through the final sector and under the second, under the bridge on this circuit. I was going to say under the second bridge, but we go over a bridge, the Anderson Bridge, and then we go under another one. But anyway, less of that, more onto the action again. And yeah, Lewis Hamilton out of this Grand Prix, which brings us up to P13, and it looks as if it's going to be P12 in a minute, as we now go side by side with Lance Stroll in the Racing Point car into turn 1, and coming diving down the inside is ourselves, and that is it. Up another position into P12, a bit of a tank slapper on exit. But you'd imagine the front runners will be coming in for a pit stop before too long. And sure enough, right on cue, there comes Pierre Gasly to fit the soft tyres. So is he going to try and go to the end of the Grand Prix? You'd imagine so. His teammate, Max Verstappen, then must be on a little bit of a different strategy. But now it's going to be interesting to see where Gasly emerges in the order. Is he going to be ahead of his teammate, or is he going to be behind? You can see some cars sweeping through turn 1, and I believe his teammate Max Verstappen has jumped him, and well, back to where they were. Yeah, Max Verstappen, net P1, Pierre Gasly, net P2. I was trying to think, were they first and second, or were they not? But they were, and they still are. And now where Verstappen has got some traffic to negotiate, he's got a McLaren ahead of him, and he's going to try and go around the outside, and then we've got one of the Haas cars locking up into turn 7. It was a heart-in-mouth moment for the race leader, or the net race leader, and then his teammate Pierre Gasly has got 2 cars between himself and Max Verstappen. So Gasly, you'd say, was looking pretty good for the race win, but if he's stuck behind these cars for too long, his one-stop strategy will be thrown into jeopardy. But yeah, you'd still say Gasly on that one-stopper looking very, very good for the race victory this afternoon. We're not going to be taking the race victory if it stays like this, but we are battling with Daniel Kvyat, very much wheel-banging. Kvyat just going straight into us there. He's given us not really much space, but you know, fair play to him. He was putting up a decent battle, but we get ahead of him, and just look at how much we get better traction through turn 5 there, and we're up into P8, and the next car up the road now is our teammate Daniel Ricciardo, who looks as if he's on the same strategy as us, because he is on the Hypersoft tyres at the moment, but he's 4 seconds up the road, as we now take a look at what is going on up at the front on lap 14 of this Grand Prix. So that man, Sebastian Vettel, has jumped Pierre Gasly in the pits, as there's a bit of carnage up ahead. You can see Max Verstappen getting caught out there by Valtteri Bottas running very wide into turn 1, which has compromised his line through there. But now you can see 1 lap later, Max Verstappen moves up ahead of Valtteri Bottas. A vital move, considering he has still got 1 more stop to make in this Grand Prix, as have the rest of the drivers here, apart from Pierre Gasly, who is a little bit behind. So Bottas has been passed by Verstappen, and Verstappen has made 1 more pit stop than him. Just showing the pace of this Red Bull car around the Singapore circuit. But there you've got the race leader at the moment, Charles Leclerc. Anyway, back on board with ourselves on lap 15, and we are looking to move up into P7 ahead of Romain Grosjean, who again, like Leclerc and Bottas, is yet to stop in this Grand Prix as we get to half race distance now. But yeah, we just want to try and get ahead of this rich energy Haas car, and then we haven't really got any more of these cars to worry about for the rest of the Grand Prix, or at least you'd hope so, if everything goes to plan. We're going to try and move now up ahead of Romain Grosjean into turn 1, and we have got up into P7. Nice little move there. It's become a little bit of a trademark now throughout the course of this Grand Prix, and we're back behind our teammate Daniel Ricciardo, who must have been stuck behind Grosjean for a bit, because of course I said earlier Ricciardo's the next car up the road. So he's really putting those Hypersofts to good use, because he's now over 7 seconds ahead of ourselves. And yeah, hopefully those Hypersofts will drop off the cliff before too long. But now you can see on lap 17, Valtteri Bottas is in the pit lane, and he's on the Hypersoft tyres. I don't really know what he's doing. He probably could have ran longer on those softs, but this is what I was saying earlier. The tyre wear around this Singapore circuit is brutal, and it looks as if he's had to bite the bullet and come in and change to a 2-stopper. So that moves us up a position into P6. There's no way that Bottas is going the full distance on those Hypersoft tyres. But we're now going to switch to the battle for P2 in this Grand Prix. The former race leader Max Verstappen is now under fire from Sebastian Vettel, who's going to try and make it a Ferrari 1-2 for the meantime. And sure enough, he makes the move into turn 7, and it is a Ferrari 1-2 in this Grand Prix. The Red Bulls have got a lot of work to do, although of course Pierre Gasly is looking in a very, very good position to take victory in this Grand Prix, because he's not too far now behind his teammate Max Verstappen. And of course Gasly doesn't have to stop again in this Grand Prix, whereas the 3 cars ahead of him all do. But back on board with ourselves, lap 18, it looks like we are going to be coming into the pit lane at the end of this lap, because our tyres are shot. That front right is once again overheating for the millionth time in this Grand Prix, and we are going to come in for our second and final stop of the afternoon. We're going to go on to another set of Ultra Softs, which should hopefully take us through the final 13 laps of this Grand Prix. Max Verstappen also in to the pit lane for his final stop of the afternoon. It looks like he had a smooth enough stop, as Valtteri Bottas sets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix on those Hypersoft tyres he had fitted a couple of laps ago. But a decent enough stop for ourselves, 2.4 seconds, and we're now going to come out in a little bit of traffic by the looks of it. I said earlier that that should be the last we see of any traffic, but we've still got cars ahead of us that need to pit before the end of this Grand Prix. So whether we end up battling them, you'd imagine so, just because of how quick we were last time on a fresh set of Ultra Soft tyres. And you'd imagine it'll be the same again. So we've got Lando Norris ahead of us, and as we go just one lap later, on lap 20, we set a purple Sector 3, which sets us just behind Lando Norris in that McLaren car. A very, very nice looking car, I have to say, especially from the back as we were following it. But we don't want to be following in for too long, as we're pretty much pushing him through turn 5. But we get on the DRS now. There's going to be no DRS for that Renault powered McLaren car, and we're going to slip down the inside by the looks of it into turn 7. Can we get the move done? It looks like we have just about get it stopped in time for the corner, and we are ahead now of the McLaren and sat in at P11 in this Grand Prix. Lance Stroll is the next man up. He's a good few seconds down the road, but that doesn't stop us from catching him before too long, and it looks as if Stroll is indeed into the pit lane, as is Daniel Kvyat at the end of lap 20, so that's handy. We don't have to waste any time catching and passing them. And the same goes for Romain Grosjean. So we're now up into P8 and just behind our teammate Daniel Ricciardo. So there's still evidently a couple more cars up ahead that need to make their final pit stops, and one of them is in on lap 21, Valtteri Bottas. So that was a very short stint on the Hypersoft tyres, as we set a purple lap on lap 21. We are in the groove with this car at the moment, and you can see just the steering movements are just so much smoother than when you've got a worn set of tyres. And we close right up to Kevin Magnussen before too long, as we're pretty much pushing him through this final section of corners. And I'm not sure whether Magnussen's going to pit again in this Grand Prix, but you wouldn't imagine that's going to matter, because we get onto the DRS and we should be able to pass him pretty easily here through turn 1, as Magnussen parks the car on the apex. Maybe he's not stopping again in this Grand Prix, because that was a very, very aggressive move from the Dane. Of course, pretty much his trademark in Formula 1, making moves like that. But hopefully we can pass him before too long, as we now get onto the DRS to try and pass him on lap 24.
Right, some information on Ricciardo. They seem to have an issue.
So you heard there on the team radio, our teammate has an issue with his car, Daniel Ricciardo, but we are now just trying to get past Kevin Magnussen, and then hopefully we can go in hot pursuit of Ricciardo, and we do indeed get ahead of Magnussen through that complex of corners. It was a little bit more difficult than we thought, but now we are hopefully going to get a little bit of a delta. So it's 5 seconds to Daniel Ricciardo on lap 25 of this Grand Prix. So we have got 7 laps left to try and catch him, and if he's got an issue, you would expect him to be a little bit slower. So anyway, before we take a look at whether he's got an issue, we're going to take a look at what's happening up at the front. And on lap 24 of this Grand Prix, we've got Sebastian Vettel coming in to the pit lane from the lead of the Grand Prix as we start lap 25 up at the front. So he's going to fit a set of the Hypersoft tyres, but that is going to drop him back in the order, and taking the lead of the Grand Prix is Pierre Gasly on a brilliant strategy, you have to say, going for that one-stopper. And yeah, he put in a very good first stint. Not quite as quick as his teammate Max Verstappen, but he is now ahead of him with just 6 laps left in this Grand Prix. And there is Verstappen, a good few seconds behind him, probably 8 or 10 seconds back. And despite him being on a better tyre, you wouldn't say that Verstappen is probably going to catch him. And now on lap 25, as Vettel has come into the pit lane, ahead of him is his teammate Charles Leclerc. So it's a race to the end between the two Ferraris. Then sat in P5, we have got our teammate Daniel Ricciardo, who looks as if he's got issues, followed by ourselves in P6 ahead of Kevin Magnussen. So it's going to be a very, very interesting last few laps of this Grand Prix. But now we go later on in lap 25, and it looks as if Sebastian Vettel has gone round the outside of Charles Leclerc on lap 26 of this Grand Prix. I said lap 25 earlier, I do apologise for that. But regardless, up in it to P3, and the final podium position is Sebastian Vettel. It was surely only a matter of time, considering his teammate was... well, he didn't have the greatest gap to him, to his teammates, considering Vettel was on the Hypersofts. But now we go back to our battle with our teammates, Daniel Ricciardo. It's very much been a Grand Prix full of battles with teammates. So the battle for P5 is very much on between now and the end of this Grand Prix. Daniel Ricciardo is very, very slow. I don't know what that problem is, but it's very much holding him up. And all we've got to do now is bide our time between now and the end of this Grand Prix. Because providing that issue on Ricciardo's car lasts between now and the end of the Grand Prix, we're going to be quicker than him. So, yeah, no real rush to make an overtake. Although it would be nice to get ahead of him and just sort of save the engine and the other components between now and the end of the Grand Prix. But we're going to go round the outside of our teammate Daniel Ricciardo. Ricciardo locks up there, but he keeps the position. We didn't want to go anywhere near him if he's locking up. The last thing we want to do is come to blows and lose 18 points. We haven't really had too many battles with our teammate this season. We very much outscored Ricciardo. Although in the last few rounds, you've got to say, Daniel's been doing a pretty good job, especially in Hungary, of course, where he led the Grand Prix for so long. But now it's looking as if we are going to be the one that comes out on top of the teammate battle in the Singapore Grand Prix. But we're still behind him, and Ricciardo's not going too slowly through this middle sector, but we are not pushing to the maximum whatsoever. You can see 2.5 seconds down on our best time through the first 2 sectors. All we've got to do, just stick with him. Live for those DRS zones on the final 4 laps of the Grand Prix. And you can see here, closing right up to him, maybe getting a little bit too close there as we go under the bridge. But as we come now through the final few corners, this is going to be our good opportunity. We get the DRS zone at the start of lap 28, and then we'll get one between turns 5 and 7 later on. So we're on the DRS. We're very, very close now to Daniel Ricciardo, and I don't think we're going to need the second DRS zone because we should go sweeping around the outside. Indeed we do. Up into P5. Double figures for points by the looks of it in this Grand Prix. And at the start of lap 28, we move ahead of Daniel Ricciardo in this Grand Prix. We're going to stay on board and just take a look at what the gap is to Charles Leclerc up in P4. By the looks of it on the mini-map, we're quite a way behind him. And yeah, sure enough, 14 seconds is the gap between ourselves and Leclerc. You wouldn't expect that we close that gap in the final few laps. But now we go on to lap 30. And we've got a 2-second gap to our teammate behind. But once again, we are getting issues on that front right tyre. Overheating is the name of the game in the Singapore Grand Prix. And I don't really like it, to be honest. We're looking a lot more understeery than we were a few laps ago. But now we're going to switch to the battle for P3 because Charles Leclerc is coming back at his teammate, Sebastian Vettel, whose Hypersoft tyres have gone right off the boil. And it looks as if Leclerc is going to have the inside line now going into the next corner at turn 8. And Charles Leclerc takes a surprise P3 off his teammate, who has got no damage by the looks of it. I thought I'll take a look to see whether whether Vettel has sustained any damage, and he hasn't. So a bit of a baffling one. It just must have been the ultra soft tyres weren't feeling it. But now we go on to the final lap of this Singapore Grand Prix. We haven't got the biggest gap back to Ricciardo, who is very much coming back into it. he must have solved whatever issues he had with the car, and his tyres are in a much healthier state by the looks of it than ours are. We are squirming all over the place in this first sector, and if Ricciardo can put his car in the right position, you never know what might happen between now and the checkered flag. It's a little bit more of a heart-stopping finish than we would have liked in this Singapore Grand Prix, and just look at the speed that Ricciardo's getting on the main straight here. And as we go into turn 7, Ricciardo looking a lot more confident with his car than we are on this final lap, and he's just trying to set it in the right position. As now we come through turn 9, we are very, very wide through there. Ricciardo taking a much tidier line, and as we go into the Singapore sling, Ricciardo is going to stick it down the inside, would you believe? We've got a lapped car of Daniel Kvyat in behind us, and that is not what we need as we go side by side with our teammate Daniel Ricciardo, and it looks as if Ricciardo is going to come out on top. Is he? Yes, he is, and I think Daniel Ricciardo is ahead of us at this stage. No, he isn't. He's still behind, but he's going to go for a move now into Sector 3 as Pierre Gasly takes the checkered flag. We have got Daniel Ricciardo, who has got ahead of us. You couldn't tell from that aerial view which car was ahead, and we were so evenly matched through there, it didn't really matter. But Daniel Ricciardo, it looks as if he's going to take P5 of us at the last gasp. Who'd have thought it after he had his issues? And we've got the fireworks going off, which is incredibly distracting when you've got a battle going on. But it looks as if Ricciardo is going to take P5, maybe get a good run through the final corner, but no, we can't. And we're going to have to settle for 8 points, being overtaken on the final lap. Bitterly, bitterly disappointing. And 18 points to Renault, but just the 8 to ourselves this afternoon. But it is 25 points for that man, Pierre Gasly, who drove a brilliant race with a great strategy, so fair play to him. And our teammate, not looking too happy, considering he's just overtaken us on the final lap. But Gasly looking very happy. He's picking up the big trophy today. And what a podium that is. What a young podium. Pierre Gasly, Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. A combined age of probably about 63 years. Which is pretty incredible. 2 of them, Leclerc and Verstappen, younger than me. How depressing is that? But anyway, on to the race results we go. And it was Gasly ahead of Verstappen by a good margin. 13.5 seconds by the looks of it, that is. With Charles Leclerc in P3 by 17 seconds off the lead. So Gasly and Leclerc very much making the the one-stopper work, despite starting behind their respective teammates, and Ricciardo and myself in 5th and 6th, with Bottas disappointing P7 for him, Grosjean and Magnussen and Lance Stroll rounding out the top 10, with Lewis Hamilton the only DNF this afternoon. 4 cars though were lapped. Kubica, Giovinazzi, Russell and Kvyat all finished a lap down in what was a grueling and long Singapore Grand Prix. Very much glad that that one's over in very much a war of attrition. So we take a look at the drivers' standings now, and our teammate Daniel Ricciardo stays in P10, but he is closed up to Sergio Perez. We stay in P5. Verstappen gained 10 points on us there, so we're going to have to be wary from the threat behind. And the same goes for Pierre Gasly, who's moved ahead of Magnussen after what I believe is his first race win of the season. Renault stay in P4, of course, because it was a great weekend for Red Bull. A 1-2 for them is as good as they could hope for. So hopefully next time out in Russia we can close the gap to them. And if you've enjoyed the Singapore Grand Prix, guys, do make sure to leave a like down below. And yeah, I'll catch you guys next time out for the Russian Grand Prix. It's been a great one this time. I'll catch you then. Take care. Bye-bye.